Spent 8 years saving our failing family business, but my parents left the company to my spoiled brother. He'll make a better owner than you. So I quit and watched from the sidelines as our business collapsed, refusing to help. Full story plus all updates. I never wanted to join the family business. After graduating from college with honors in financial management, my dreams were set on making my own mark in the corporate world. Several prestigious companies had already shown interest in my resume, and I was excited about building my career from scratch. But life had other plans. My name is Alice Chen, and I was always the responsible one, while my older brother Tommy was the golden child who could do no wrong. He got the newest gadgets, the fanciest clothes, and most importantly, our parents' undivided attention. I learned early on to be self-sufficient, throwing myself into studies and working part-time at our company during summers to earn my own money. Chen Global Trading had been in our family for 3 generations. My great-grandfather started it with just shipping containers of electronics from Taiwan. By the time my father took over, it had grown into a respectable mid-sized company handling imports from all across Asia. I knew the business inside and out from my summer jobs, but I never thought I'd end up running it. That was supposed to be Tommy's destiny. "Alice, we need to talk," my father said one evening, his voice unusually serious. I had just finished telling him about a promising interview with Goldman Sachs over dinner at his office. "What's wrong, Dad?" He gestured for me to sit down, his face lined with worry. "The company, it's not doing well. We're losing money faster than ever before." I felt my stomach tighten. I thought Tommy was learning the ropes? You always said he'd take over. Dad's face flushed with embarrassment. "Your brother, he's not ready. Yesterday he expense reported a $5,000 dinner with clients at that new French restaurant. When I asked him about the business discussed, he couldn't remember a single detail." "And what does this have to do with me?" I asked, although I was beginning to see where this was going. "I need you to take over as CEO," he said simply. "You're smart, responsible, and you know the business. The company needs you, Alice." I sat there, stunned. For years I'd been told this was Tommy's birthright. Now suddenly, because he couldn't handle it, they wanted me to step in and fix everything? What about my own career plans? I protested. "I've worked hard for this, Dad. I have interviews lined up. This is our family's legacy," he interrupted, his voice cracking slightly. "Your great-grandfather built this company from nothing. Are you really going to let it fail?" I looked at the old black and white photo on his wall, my great-grandfather standing proudly in front of his first warehouse. The weight of 3 generations of family history pressed down on my shoulders. "Tommy won't like this," I said finally. Dad sighed. "Let me handle your brother." "Will you do it?" I stared out the window at the city skyline, watching my carefully planned future slip away. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'll do it." My first day as CEO of Chen Global Trading felt surreal. Walking through the familiar hallways, I was greeted by faces I'd known since I was a teenager, running errands and filing paperwork during summer breaks. I spent the next 2 weeks buried in financial reports, my financial management degree finally proving useful in ways I hadn't expected. Mrs. Rodriguez, our head of accounting, and her team were invaluable, providing me with years of records and explaining various accounting practices that had become standard under my brother's influence. "I hate to show you this," Mrs. Rodriguez said one evening, placing a thick folder on my desk, "but you need to see where the money's really going." The numbers told a story of systematic mismanagement and wasteful spending. But it was when I started digging into the expense reports that my blood really began to boil. The documents revealed a pattern of excessive spending that made my stomach turn. An $80,000 Tesla Model S purchased 6 months ago under transportation expenses. A $12,000 monthly rent for a penthouse apartment in downtown, listed as client entertainment facilities. A $25,000 shopping spree at Armani, somehow classified as professional development expenses. "Has my father seen these reports?" I asked Mrs. Rodriguez. She shook her head. "Tommy always had a way of presenting things differently to your father, more vaguely. The details got buried in broader categories." I stayed late into the night, poring over every detail. The more I looked, the more I found. Weekend trips to Vegas labeled as client relationship building. Designer suits and watches filed under professional image maintenance. The company was bleeding money through a 1,000 expensive cuts, all traced back to my brother's spending habits. By the end of my audit, I had made my decision. I drafted a new company expense policy, one that would eliminate all these excessive privileges. Everyone, including Tommy and myself, would operate on base salary alone. No more luxury cars, no more penthouse apartments, no more shopping sprees disguised as business expenses. As I finished typing the last page of the new policy, I glanced at the old black and white photo of my great-grandfather on the wall. "I'm going to fix this," I promised him silently. "Whatever it takes." I knew the storm that was coming. Tommy wouldn't take these changes lying down, but I had the numbers, the documentation, and most importantly, the authority to make these necessary changes. Let him try to justify $1,200 swimming trunks as a business expense to my face. I was reviewing supplier contracts when my office door burst open with such force that it bounced off the wall. Tommy stormed in, his face red with rage, waving a copy of the new expense policy I distributed that morning. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, slamming the document onto my desk. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything away from me?" I kept my voice steady. "These are necessary changes to save the company, Tommy. You've always been jealous of me, always trying to prove you're better than me. And now you're using Dad's temporary insanity to push me out." "No one is pushing you out," I said. "But the company can't afford to bankroll your lifestyle anymore. My lifestyle? He laughed bitterly. I bring in half our clients. You think they want to meet in some cheap restaurant? Drive around in a Toyota? They want to do business with a solvent company, I countered. Which we won't be if screw you, Alice. He kicked my visitor's chair across the room. You're nothing but a jealous bitch who couldn't stand seeing me succeed. I'm calling Dad. He stormed out, leaving papers scattered across my floor. I knew exactly where this was heading. Sure enough, that Saturday at our family dinner, I could feel the tension as soon as I walked in. Mom was unusually quiet as she served the pot roast, and Dad kept clearing his throat, his nervous tell. Finally, Mom couldn't hold back anymore. Alice, don't you think you're being a little harsh with your brother? He's worked so hard for the company, has he? I reached for my briefcase. I'd come prepared for this. Would you like to see exactly how Tommy's been working hard with company money? I spread out the documents across the dining table, right next to Mom's best china. Credit card statements, expense reports, receipts, all carefully highlighted and annotated. This is the penthouse he rented with company funds. This is the Tesla he bought. Here are the Vegas trips, the designer shopping sprees, the $1,000 dinners. Mom shook her head. He needs to entertain clients. With $1,200 swimming trunks, I pointed to that particular receipt. With a $15,000 watch. Your brother has always had good instincts for business, Mom insisted. He knows how to make people feel special. Dad had been silent, studying the documents with a deepening frown. These numbers, he finally said. Tommy, is this accurate? Tommy, who'd been sulking at the other end of the table, shrugged. It's all legitimate business expenses. Alice is just too rigid to understand how modern business works. That's enough, Dad cut in. He looked tired, older somehow. Alice is right about the expenses, Tommy. They need to stop. He held up his hand when Tommy tried to protest. But she's also going to help you learn to run the company properly. I blinked in surprise. I am? Dad nodded. My plan is to eventually split the company between you two, 5,050. But that only works if you both know how to manage it. He looked at me pleadingly. Will you teach him? I looked at Tommy, who was staring at his plate, jaw clenched. Teaching him would be like teaching a cat to swim, but I heard myself saying, yes, I'll try. Looking at Tommy across the conference room table, I couldn't help but think about our childhood. While I was doing homework, he was racing his friends in the Porsche he got for his 16th birthday. When I spent summers learning the business, he was partying in the Hamptons. Mom and Dad always said he was living life to the fullest, while I was too serious. I remember the Christmas when I asked for accounting software to practice with, and they got me a sweater. Tommy got a jet ski. When I made honor roll, they nodded absently. When Tommy managed to graduate with C's, they threw a massive party. It wasn't that they didn't love me, they just loved him more obviously, more demonstratively, more completely. Now, watching him slouch in his expensive chair during our budget meeting, I saw the results of that upbringing. Tommy, are you following these quarterly projections? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. He glanced up from his phone. Yeah. Numbers going up is good. Numbers going down is bad. Can we wrap this up? It's a bit more complex than that, I said. These projections affect our inventory decisions for the next 6 months. He sighed dramatically but put his phone down. Small victories. I made sure to invite him to every important meeting. Client negotiations, supplier contracts, strategy sessions. If it mattered to the company, I wanted him there. Most of the time he just sat there looking bored, checking his watch or playing with his pen. But occasionally he'd surprise me. Why don't we try importing luxury pet products? He suggested during one meeting. Rich people are crazy about their dogs these days. We could mark up the prices like crazy. The market's already saturated, I explained gently. And the certification process for pet products is complicated. Another time, we should invest everything in cryptocurrency. My friend made millions last month. I had to take a deep breath before responding to that one. We need more stable investments for company funds. His ideas were usually impractical or too risky, but at least he was thinking about the business. It was more engagement than I had seen from him in years. During a meeting with our biggest client, he actually paid attention the whole time. Afterward, he said, you're pretty good at this. The way you handled their pricing concerns. It was probably the first genuine compliment he'd ever given me. Thanks, Tommy. Want to grab lunch and I can explain the negotiation strategy one used? Nah, got plans, he said, already heading for the door, but maybe next time. I watched him go, thinking about how patterns set in childhood become the architecture of our adult lives. Tommy never had to try because everything was handed to him. I always had to try twice as hard because nothing was. Now I was supposed to teach him what I'd spent years learning on my own. 8 years. 8 years of early mornings and late nights. 8 years of tough decisions and careful management. 8 years of teaching Tommy everything I knew, while simultaneously running the company at peak performance. The numbers told the story better than I could. Profits up 300% since I took over. 5 new branches opened across the state. A client list that had tripled in size. Chen Global Trading wasn't just surviving anymore, it was thriving. Dad's 70th birthday party was supposed to be a celebration of all that success. The private room at Golden Palace Restaurant was packed with family, close friends, and our most important business partners. The same faces who'd watched our company grow from near bankruptcy to industry leader. I'd helped Mom plan every detail from the traditional red decorations to Dad's favorite 8-course menu. Even Tommy had shown up on time for once. He'd been unusually quiet lately, but I figured he was just nervous about his presentation of our latest expansion plans. After the Peking duck was served, Dad stood up, tapping his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. I have an important announcement, he said, smiling at all of us. After much thought, I've decided it's time for me to fully retire. There were murmurs of appreciation around the room. Dad had been semi-retired for years ever since he made me CEO, but he still kept an office and came in for major decisions. And so he continued, it's time to talk about succession, about legacy. My stomach tightened, something in his voice. Chen Global Trading has been in our family for 3 generations, passed down from father to son. Today I'm proud to announce that I'm transferring full ownership of the company to Tommy. The room erupted in applause. I sat there frozen as relatives congratulated my brother. This couldn't be happening. Dad, I said standing up, my voice cut through the celebrations. What about our agreement? You promised to split the company between us. The room went quiet. Dad shrugged, not quite meeting my eyes. The company has always passed through the male line, Alice. It's tradition. Besides, Tommy will make an excellent leader. Leader? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm the one who saved this company. I'm the one who turned it around. Now dear, Mom cut in. Don't make a scene. Tommy has natural leadership abilities. He'll make a better owner then. Better? I laughed incredulously. Where was his natural leadership when the company was failing? Where was it during the 8 years I spent teaching him basic business concepts? Tommy stood up, straightening his tie. Speaking of which, sis, you should start preparing to hand over your CEO duties. As the new owner, I'll be taking that position as well. He smirked at me across the table, the same smirk he'd had when he got that Porsche for his 16th birthday, when he took credit for my work in high school, when he spent company money like water because he knew he'd never face consequences. You know what? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You all deserve each other. 8 years I spent fixing Dad's mistakes and covering Tommy's incompetence. 8 years of my life sacrificed for this family's legacy. Alice, Mom gasped. How dare you be so selfish? Selfish? I turned to face her. Was I being selfish when I worked 60-hour weeks to save the company? When I gave up my own career dreams? When I tried to teach Tommy despite knowing he'd never learn? You're just envious, Dad said coldly. You've always been jealous of your brother. Get out, Mom said, pointing to the door. If you can't be happy for your brother's success, you can leave. I looked around the room at my relatives' uncomfortable faces, at the business partners who wouldn't meet my eyes, at my family's expressions of righteous indignation. Gladly. The next morning, I walked into the office one last time to clear out my desk. Tommy was there, feet up on his new desk, my old desk, watching me pack. Don't forget to leave your keys, he smirked. I dropped my resignation letter on his desk without a word. 8 years of my life packed into one cardboard box. Thankfully, I'd always lived well below my means. The savings I'd accumulated bought me a beautiful apartment in the historic district. I decided to take a few months off, something I hadn't done since college. The first signs of trouble at Chen Global Trading started 3 months later. Mrs. Rodriguez called me over coffee. They fired me, she said, hands wrapped around her cup. Tommy said I was too old school in my accounting practices. Over the next few weeks, more calls came. Tommy had replaced most of the senior management with his college buddies. The new CFO was a guy he used to party with who'd barely passed business school. He's back to his old spending habits, reported James, my former VP of operations who'd also been let go. Bought himself a new Maserati as a company car. But that's not the worst part. The worst part, as it turned out, was Tommy's solution to their first major crisis. When their main supplier raised prices, instead of negotiating or finding a reputable alternative, Tommy switched to a sketchy supplier offering suspiciously low prices. The products are garbage, Sarah from Quality Control told me before she too was fired. Half of them are defective, but Tommy won't listen. Says we're being too picky. Within 6 months, the company had lost 3 major clients. Within 8 months, most of our long-term partners had jumped ship. The carefully built reputation I'd spent 8 years cultivating was crumbling in a matter of months. I heard it all through the grapevine and I felt absolutely nothing. 1 year to the day after that fateful birthday dinner, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but some remnant of daughterly duty made me pick up. Alice? His voice sounded older, tired. We need to talk. I waited, letting the silence stretch between us. Tommy, he hasn't worked out as we hoped. He cleared his throat. The company's in trouble, real trouble. I'm aware, I said flatly. The business community isn't that big. I'd heard about their latest disasters through my professional network. We need you back, he said. You can name your terms. Full control, whatever salary you want. Tommy will step aside. I couldn't help but laugh. Now you want me back? After you threw away 8 years of my work because of tradition? This is our family's legacy, Alice. Your great-grandfather's company. You can't just let it die. My great-grandfather's company died the day you chose your son's ego over your daughter's competence, I replied. The company I built for 8 years, that's what's dying now, and I don't care. How can you say that? His voice rose. This is your family's business, your heritage. You have a responsibility. No, Dad, I don't. Not anymore. You made your choice a year ago. Now you can live with it. Alice, please. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked Mom's number too for good measure. Looking out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, I smiled. My new business card read, Alice Chen, Chief Executive Officer of Morton International, one of the largest import-export firms on the East Coast. I'd been headhunted for the position 6 months ago. Alice? My assistant poked her head in. The board members are ready for your presentation. I gathered my papers, straightening my jacket. The quarterly results were excellent, we'd exceeded all projections, and I had plans to expand into 3 new markets. Your strategy for the Asian markets is brilliant, Richard Morton, the company owner, had told me last week. Best decision I ever made bringing you on board. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, doing exactly what I'd always wanted to do, being valued for exactly who I was. No family drama, no emotional manipulation, no brothers to babysit, just pure business, run well. News travels fast in family circles, even when you've cut off direct contact. It was my cousin Jennifer who told me over lunch exactly 2 years after I'd walked out of Golden Palace Restaurant. "They've filed for bankruptcy," she said, stirring her coffee. Tommy had to sell everything. The house, the Maserati, even that ridiculous watch collection of his. I took a sip of my wine, letting the information settle. And he's moved back in with Aunt Linda and Uncle James. They converted their home office into a bedroom for him. Jennifer hesitated. "They're saying it's temporary, just until he gets back on his feet." I could picture it perfectly. Tommy in his childhood bedroom, Mom making his favorite meals, Dad making excuses for him. Some patterns really do never change. The details emerged over the following weeks through various family channels. The company's collapse had been spectacular, not just a failure, but a cautionary tale that would be whispered about in business circles for years to come. The defective products had led to lawsuits, the mismanaged funds had led to debt, the alienated partners had led to isolation. Everything I'd built over 8 years had been dismantled in less than 2, leaving nothing but debts and broken relationships. "Your father had to re-mortgage their house to cover some of the debts," my Aunt Maria reported during our monthly phone call. "They're saying you could have prevented this if you'd come back when they asked." I laughed at that, actually laughed out loud in my corner office overlooking Central Park. Morton International had just posted its best quarter in company history under my leadership. The Wall Street Journal had run a profile on me last month, praising my innovative approach to international trade relationships. "They're still not getting it, are they?" I said to Maria. "This isn't about me abandoning them. This is about them never truly valuing what they had." Later that evening, I sat on my penthouse balcony, bought with my own money, earned through my own merit, watching the sunset over the city. I thought about Tommy back in our parents' house, probably still blaming everyone but himself for what happened. I thought about Dad, who chose tradition over talent, and Mom, who chose favoritism over fairness. I thought about that old black and white photo of my great-grandfather that used to hang in the office. I wondered if they'd managed to save it from the liquidators, or if it had been sold along with everything else. A notification popped up on my phone, another glowing review of our company's performance under my leadership. The headline read, "Morton International CEO transforms company culture, a new era of growth." Should I feel guilty? That's what they all expect. The relatives who still talk to me, the old family friends who whisper about the prodigal daughter who let her family's legacy die. They think I should be torn up inside, haunted by what happened. But I'm not, because here's the truth about legacies. They're not about buildings or brand names or even family traditions. They're about values. My great-grandfather built his company on hard work, integrity, and genuine business acumen. Those values didn't die with Chen Global Trading. They lived on through